channel. So tonight's case is going to be the Millie Dowler case. Can I just thank you all for liking, commenting, subscribing on our 2 previous cases, and as well as that, our Keep Up with Christy as well. It is greatly appreciated. You can also catch us on Facebook, Instagram, Christy's Readings, TikTok, Christy's Readings 1, and Snapchat, Christy's Readings as well. Right, sit back and get ready for another one of our cases. As always, we will do the spirit box at the end of the case, like the last 2 cases that we've done, and please pop your comments below if you hear anything or you feel anything significant within this video. Yeah, I hope you enjoy. Millie Dowler was 13. She was also known as Amanda Jane Dowler. She was born the 25th of June 1988. She was born to Sally and Bob Dowler, and she also had an older sister, Gemma Dowler, as well. There was a few years between Millie and Gemma, but they were best friends, very close, up late nights, late snacks, everything you do with your sister when you share a room, as they did share a room. Now, they came from Surrey. Millie did love playing the saxophone. She was well liked within her peers. She had good friends round about as well. And overall, she was a bubbly 13-year-old. On March the 21st, 2002, Millie was leaving her school. As she was leaving, she bumped into a friend she hadn't seen for a while, Danielle, and they both agreed to walk to the train station together. Now, when they got on the train, it was then decided, because they hadn't seen each other for ages, that Millie would go off at Danielle's stop. They would go for something to eat at the cafe, and then Millie would head home from there. Girls having a catch-up. What I do get from the story is that Millie wasn't any different from any other 13-year-old, or to any parent out there with a 13-year-old. We allow them to walk home from school, we trust them. It's daylight, it's 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Millie's school was on a busy road. Again, the walk home was on a main road and a busy road as well. Keep that in mind. Now, police did confirm that Millie and Danielle were seen on the school CCTV at 3:07. They were then seen on the train station CCTV at 3:24, and they both did go on the train together. Millie and Danielle made it to the cafe, and when they were in the cafe, there were boys there as well. Now, Millie had ran out of credit in her phone, and because she'd got off at the stop before, she wanted to phone her dad Bob to let him know that she'd be home shortly. And that's what she did. She used she borrowed one of the boys' phones, and called her dad just to let him know that she would be home pretty much fairly soon. At 4:05, Gemma and Millie both left the cafe. Now, Gemma had a lift to go home, and she did say to Millie, "Will you be alright going home yourself? Would you like me to walk you?" And Millie made a joke and a laugh, like, "It's fine, it's on a main road for one, it's daylight, it's only 4 o'clock in the afternoon." We need to keep that in mind at this point, to how light it was, how busy it was. Now, you know yourself when you're out in the school run, or if you're busy, you don't always notice things that you normally would notice if it was late at night and it was quiet. So again, this girl was walking home like any normal school girl, fitting in with the crowd as such. Millie walked past a bus stop, which Gemma, her sister's friend, was at. Now, that was the last ever sighting of Millie Dowler. The girl said that she seen Millie and the bus had just came, and she got on the bus, and when the bus was driving away, the route where Millie would have been walking, she wasn't there, she never seen her. She did think it was a bit strange and a bit off, but again, at that point, not a massive cause of concern, and got on with it a day, as you would. Millie never made it home that evening, and after Bob and Sally and Gemma contacting her friends and family to see if anyone knew anything, they then called the police to report Millie missing. The police and locals searched through the night for Millie, and on the next day they put out a public appeal where Millie's face was absolutely everywhere. They also brought in helicopters, but they also brought in detectives from the Sarah Payne case from 2 years ago. Police did believe at that point that she wasn't taken by force. There was no evidence to prove that that was the case. The search went on for days and days. And 7 days down the line, there was still no sign of Millie. There was no trace. There was no evidence to say anything that had happened. It was then suggested that Bob and Sally go on Crime Watch. Now, they went on Crime Watch. They did their appeal. But also, to be as open-minded at this point, they also appealed directly to Millie, just in case she had ran away or maybe she was having problems that they didn't know about. So again, they had done everything round Crime Watch to bring in some sort of appeal to either reach out to Millie or reach out to the person that had Millie or who'd harmed Millie.
We just want to have Millie back home with us so much. For Milly's parents, the agony has been horrendous, appealing many times for their daughter's safe
They
return.
did look for CCTV footage, but they couldn't find any on that road between the bus stop or where Milly was walking to. It was like she'd just disappeared. There 1 minute, gone the next. And again, we've got to keep in mind here, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's daylight, it's a busy road. People are coming back and forth from their work, back and forth from after school care, all these different things. Now, the CCTV footage that the police could see on that road, due to it being sunny, it raining, the vision on the camera wasn't great. Sometimes it'd be a little bit clearer, other times it wouldn't be. But it wasn't clear enough to decide whether she'd been on that CCTV footage or not, or there was anything on it that would be significant to Milly's disappearance. Now, we've got to remember that was 2002. We have came a long way since 2002 around technology. What the police did do was send the footage to the FBI in America to get them to have a look at the footage. Now, it took the FBI 6 months to come back to them with what they found on the footage. What the FBI did notice was that there was a sports car parked in Station Road across from the railway station, or close to the railway station. It was the Mazda MX-6 sports car. Now, there was only 5,000 made of them, so because they were so elite, they put an appeal out straight away for this sports car, knowing fine well there wouldn't be many in the UK. The same day that the appeal was put out for the car, a lady came forward to say that it had actually been herself and her son, and they were heading to the estate agents, and that's why they were parked there. So again, a lead that they thought they had ran cold very, very quickly. But at this point as well, Milly was also presumed dead. On the 18th of September 2002, 6 months after Milly had disappeared, mushroom pickers came across remains in the Yeatley Woods in Hampshire. The body was that badly decomposed, they had to use dental records, and it was confirmed that it was Millie Dowler. Now, Milly was found naked. She had no possessions. She didn't have her school bag. Now, bearing in mind that day Milly was coming from school, to this day, Milly's possessions have never ever been found. But again, sadly, a poor 13-year-old little girl out in the woods for all that time. And because the body was that badly decomposed, they could never find a cause of death. To obviously the extent it was 6 months later before they found her. The police brought in pollen experts, and it was basically to investigate the surroundings and the growth of where Milly's body was. And they determined by doing all their investigations that they believed that Milly's body was put there the week that she went missing. A month later, the police closed the road at the woods, and they questioned over 6,000 motorists and asked them were they regular in the area, had they seen anything in the area. Again, for 6,000 motorists, they were still on no leads whatsoever. Everything was running very, very cold around the case. At one point, even Bob Dowler was questioned as a suspect. Now, there was no evidence or anything against him. It was more because he was her father that they had to question him as a suspect. And again, there was nothing around Bob that would suggest anything other than that he was a loving father to Milly. In April 2003, 6 months after Milly's body was found, a man, Paul Hughes, was charged and arrested for harassing the Dowler family. He was telling them that he had killed Milly, that he was going to do the same to the rest of them, but the reality was he was never a suspect in the case. Now, he was in prison for indecent assault on a 12-year-old girl. While he was in prison, this is when he was writing these letters to the Dowler family. Lady Leanne Newman, in the same month, was also charged. She was making phone calls and sending letters, kidding on she was Milly, pretending to be Milly's friends and family. You just wonder what goes on in people's head, why they would feel the need to hurt a family even more than they're already hurting, or not seeing the severity or the sadness of a situation like that. Why would you want to be part of it? It's a lot of attention seeking, I think. Now, a man, Gary Farr, was also sectioned under the Mental Health Act, as he was calling the police and calling Milly's school, telling them that Milly was still alive and she'd been abducted and taken to Poland to be a sex slave. So he was sectioned under the Mental Health Act. I can't imagine what the Dowler family was going through at that point, on top of what already they had to deal with, not knowing who their daughter's killer was, and having to come to terms with that shock and that news without, again, other people getting involved and making it even worse for them. I think because the case was so public, that's why it attracted so many attention seekers. But it was a bit of a catch-22 for the Dowler family and the police, because it had to be as public as possible that Millie's face was out there, because at the beginning we didn't know if she was dead or alive or what had actually happened. And I think it was the backlash, it being so public, to then bring on all these different people being charged, sectioned under the Mental Health Act. And again, the Dowler family are having to deal with this on top of trying to find their daughter's killer. In November 2011, another police department got in touch with the police to let them know that they'd been investigating murders and assaults and targeting young women, and they felt that they may have a lead on the Millie Dowler case. The police gave the name Levi Bellfield. Before he had moved to London and committed his murders, he was living 100 yards from where Millie Dowler had went missing. Now, at this point, that was the only lead they were going on, but because the tendencies were there, the fact that he lived 100 yards away, and as the story goes on, there's again more things that will tie in to the actions he was taking while everyone else was searching for Millie. Levi treated women as possessions. He wanted to be in control, and he was very aggressive and frustrated if he wasn't. He would be violent to these women. When Millie went missing, the police did door-to-door inquiries. They tried on 11 occasions to get hold of Levi, and no one ever answered the door, and eventually they just left it. At the time Levi was on the police radar for Millie's murder, he'd already committed 2 murders, an attempted murder and 30 assaults. The first murder was Amélie Delgrange. She was a French student who was visiting the UK. Now, she'd been out with friends and she'd got the bus back alone. She'd missed a stop and she'd got off a few stops later. She took a shortcut to walk home through Twickenham Green, where later she was found unconscious. She'd been hit with a blunt object in the head and sadly later died in hospital. The second murder was Marsha MacDonald. She was 19. Same type of story. She was going home alone late at night and she was hit with a blunt object, and she was found again unconscious in the woods that Millie Dowler was found as well, and she died later on in hospital. The police were checking all different cases to see if he would be linked to any other ones, because of the rate of murder and assault that had been within that area as well. 24th of May 2014, a lady, Katie Sheedy, had reported that she'd been coming home alone on the bus, and when she'd got off, she was walking towards her home. Now, her home was on the same side of the road that she was walking, but she did notice a car with someone in it, no lights on, no engine, and decided, even though her home was on that side of the road, she was going to cross over the road. She didn't feel safe enough to walk by the car. As she was crossing the road, the lights went on, the engine went on, the car sped toward her at a very, very high speed. It ran her over, it then reversed back over her again, ran over her again, and then the car took off.
Everywhere. The car stopped and took me out. Yeah. But then again, she ran over me.
He ran over you again?
Yeah.
So he ran over you twice?
Yeah.
Like all Levi's victims, I think he expected that he had killed that lady. You could hear in the call that obviously wasn't the case. She was able, Kate, to make a full recovery. And a week later she could give a full description, and she said that it was a family carrier with blacked out windows that had a broken wing mirror on the passenger side as well. Looked at CCTV footage from the bus, and they realised that car had been following the bus for a long period of time, which would then make the police think that this was a targeted attack. Because it was dark, it was hard to figure out with the bus CCTV which model the car was. Levi also had been charged with abduction and imprisonment in 2001, and also attempted murder in 2003, and wasn't sentenced for either of them. July the 6th, 2005, Levi was finally questioned over the disappearance and murder of Millie Dowler. He denied everything and he no commented through all his interview.
No comment.
You didn't say, it's not me.
No comment.
And at no stage over the last 2 days have you denied any involvement in these offences?
No comment.
Police were convinced it was Levi that had killed Millie Dowler, but again didn't have enough evidence. So what they decided to do was take a wee look into his past, his ex-partners, and the partner that he was with at the time that Millie had went missing, and that would have been Emma Mills that I was with, and who was his partner at that time, who also lived alongside him with their children. Emma Mills told the police that at the time that Millie disappeared, the flat was empty. They were house sitting for a friend, Levi and Emma, and on the day that Millie went missing, Levi didn't return home until 10 p.m, 11 p.m. at night, and it wasn't to the flat, it was to the house that they were house sitting with. Emma also said when he returned home that night, the clothes that she had seen him wearing in the morning, he had already changed and he was not wearing them at night either. She also said that they both went to bed and he woke her up at 3 o'clock in the morning to say that he was heading back to the flat with the dog that was in the house with them, because he wanted to lie in the morning. So he left the house sitting home at 3 o'clock in the morning and headed back to the flat alongside his family dog. Strangely, the next day, Levi moved his full family out of that flat. Emma said the flat was like a squat. It didn't have parts of the kitchen cupboard, it didn't have flooring in the kitchen, and what she'd noticed was missing was the bed sheets, and she questioned him about the bed sheets to ask where they were, and he blamed the dog and said the dog had made a mess. Now Emma said to the police that she knew that the dog wouldn't make a mess. She knew what the dog was like. It wasn't a habit of doing that. My question to Emma is, why didn't she raise the alarm at that point then? Emma did say to the police that she felt that Levi was cheating, and with the bed sheets and everything, she was more thinking along the lines that he maybe had a woman in the flat, and that's where her head was at that point. Police decided to interview more of Levi's exes, and one of those exes was a lady called Joanna. Now, Joanna was a keen horse rider, and when the police spoke with her, she'd said that Levi had attended 5 or 6 horse shows with her, but they also went a walk in the woods with the dogs. Now, the police asked Joanna, could you take us to the woods that you walk the dogs? And when Joanna took them to the woods where the dogs are walked, it was the exact same spot that they'd found Millie Dowler's body. As much as suspicion is high at this point, the police still don't have evidence or a clean link to link Levi to the disappearance and abduction and murder of Millie Dowler. Also did extensive searches by using divers, going into rivers, lakes, camera footage to find out if the car had been put in somewhere like that, and again, nothing was shown or came up. So the police decide to go back and speak to his ex-partner Emma Mills to find out more about, on that day, what type of car he was driving, all these different things, and this is where it transpires. Now, it turns out that Levi had a red hatchback Daewoo car, and 8 days after Millie disappeared, it was reported as missing and stolen. Now, to this day, that car has never ever been found. To check if there is DNA or anything, the police have went to cold leads every time trying to find the car. There's never been any evidence to where that car actually ended up. So unfortunately, they could never use forensics or check that car to find out if she'd been in the car with him. Decided to then put another public appeal out if anybody could give any information, if they'd seen the car or they could tell any information around that situation. 11-year-old Rachel Carroll's family came forward and they explained that the day before that Millie had went missing, their daughter Rachel was approached by a car, and the man stopped and said to her, "I live next door, I've just moved in, can I give you a lift home?" Rachel said straight away that she panicked and she ran away because she knew her neighbours. She'd known her neighbours for years, so she would have known if someone had moved in or moved out. Now, that was the day before Millie's disappearance, and it was also 3 miles from where Millie disappeared. Rachel was even able to give a description. She said that he was between the age of 30 and 40. He had a round face, and also said that there was 2 car seats in the back, and it was a red hatchback. Emma did confirm that at that time there would have been 2 car seats in the back, so again she could confirm what also Rachel had seen. It was the first shred of evidence the police had where they could put the person in the car together and also that they were attempting to pick up young girls. In May 2006, justice was finally served for Marsha and Amelie, and for Kate, who he had attempted to murder. He was done for attempted murder and 2 murders. He still said no comment, and he still denied all the charges. Now, at this point, there still wasn't any direct evidence to link Levi to the disappearance and abduction of Millie Dowler. But they had to work hard to prove that he was the only one that could have done it, with again all the evidence in the case that they were building. Eventually Levi was given life in prison for the 2 murders and the attempted murder. Now, the police had brought experts in to try and pinpoint the exact point that Millie had went missing. Now, bearing in mind, between the bus stop, there was no CCTV. Eventually, the experts could put it straight down to Station Road, just at the Collingwood Place. Now, Collingwood Place is where Levi's flat was. Where they believed that Millie had went missing was basically on Station Road, and it was like a lane, like a pathway, up towards Collingwood Place. It was full of bushes and hedges, so although you could see, no one could really see you. A very, very, very secluded area as it comes off the main road, and that takes you straight into where Levi's flat was. But it was pointed out on that pathway, what you can see is directly up to the train station, and you can see the people coming in and out the train station, who's coming off and who's coming in, etc. When phone records were checked for Levi, it showed him leaving the area, and then his phone was off for 6 hours. Now, bearing in mind, he didn't return home to 10 p.m, 11 p.m. that night. Now, remember rightly, he did head back to the flat at 3 o'clock in the morning with the family dog. It is thought the reason he's head back to the flat is because Emma was due back there on the Friday, and at that point, it's likely Millie's body was still there, and it would have had to been taken out when it was dark. There was a witness that seen him get back to the flat with the dog. They didn't see him taking anything out. But they did see him arriving back at the flat. So effectively, within 8 days, day 1, Levi had got rid of the flat, he'd got rid of his clothes, he'd got rid of the car. Anything that would connect to Millie Dowler had got rid of. That kind of says it as well, doesn't it? It's so, so sad that while everyone was out looking, now the witness that actually seen him going back into the flat was actually a witness who was out searching for Millie Dowler at that point. I just can't imagine. On the 31st of March 2010, 8 years after Millie Dowler had been murdered, he was charged with the abduction and the murder of Millie Dowler. Now, at this point, he was still denying it. Bearing in mind, he was still in jail in a life sentence for the 2 murders he'd already committed and the attempted murder of Kate. Now, the trial started in May 2011. At this point, he still denied all charges. His defence lawyer tried to claim, and I'm not going to get into too much detail with this to hold respect for Millie and her family, about suicide letters. There were letters to do with Millie Dowler that she had written, and they'd been found when the police had obviously checked her home, and the defence used that to the reason that she could have committed suicide, she could have ran away, she was suicidal, she had deep dark thoughts. Now, 2011, we were still not as educated on mental health at that point, so I can imagine when something like that's been brought up in court, I can't imagine how it is for the family, but especially at that time, we didn't speak comfortably about mental health the way we do now, and I'm sure that was a low blow for the family, for the defence lawyer to use that as a defence. The reality was, Millie was a 13-year-old girl, just getting used to her body, just getting used to her looks, and trying to fit in social circles like most 13-year-old girls. She was putting her thoughts down on paper, whether they were dark or whether they were light. The point was she was still only a 13-year-old girl, and this defence lawyer had then said that it could have been someone else that killed her, she could have ran away. I'm sure to anyone out there that's got a 13-year-old child, and more so probably in this day and age, we speak comfortably about mental health. But back then, it was very much a taboo subject. And I think it's very, very sad that whether it be the murderer or the defence lawyer that can defend something with that type of tactic, I hope you can put your head in the pillow every night. I really, really do. It was a very weak argument, and it proved a very weak argument, because in July 2011, Levi was charged with the abduction and the murder of Millie, and he was given another life sentence. Now, bearing in mind he was already serving a life sentence for the 2 other murders and the attempted murder. In 27th of January 2016, it was alleged that Levi did admit to raping and murdering Milly. He then retracted at a later date. Why would you retract? Give the family the justice they deserve. Attention seekers. It also came out in July 2011 that the News of the World had been hacking Milly's phone. Now, when Milly was missing, her mum, dad and sister and friends would constantly phone her phone and leave voicemails in the hope that maybe if she was missing, she would pick up these voicemails and come home. It got to a point that the mailbox was full. So when they were calling and Sally, her mum, was calling, there was a message to say that the inbox is full, you can't leave a message. And one day, Sally called Milly's phone and it went through to the voicemail. That lady thought her daughter was alive at that point. Now, bear in mind, Milly was still missing, her body hadn't been found. But because the mailbox had changed, she had then presumed that Milly was alive, because before, the mailbox was obviously full. What had actually happened was that the News of the World was hacking into her phone, listening to her voicemails, and so that the family would leave more voicemails so they had more content and things to run in their papers and their media, they would delete some of the messages so there was enough room. To the journalists out there that did that, did you have children of your own? Do you worry every day now that type of karma comes back to get you? You should worry, because it does. And we all know with the News of the World and the media how many lives they've ruined by phone hacking. The media in general, I have a strong belief that it wasn't just the News of the World. I have a strong belief that other media outlets were doing the exact same. Our journalists were leaving the News of the World when the scandal came out to go to other media outlets to show them how to do it. But in the end, it became such a big investigation, then it couldn't happen after that. The disgust in myself for this, I can't imagine the disgust in the Dowler family. Levi has since been suspected of many rapes, murders and assaults dating back right to the 1990s. I'm going to add my conclusion at the end of this video. We're about to do the spirit box now, so if it's not your kind of thing, I totally understand, but please like, comment and subscribe before you turn off. It's greatly appreciated. I'm not going to keep the spirit box on for too long. I have a daughter at 14. I think this case is very, very raw. And I'm sure every mother and father and guardian out there are holding on to their kids just that little bit tighter. Never ever forget this. There is one paedophile that lives in every street, and that's in 2021. We normalise the word beast. We use the word beast to annoy people and hurt people and upset people and troll people. The fact we're normalising it makes it more acceptable when it's not acceptable. In 2002, we didn't have the social media that we have now. We should be making good awareness around it and be very, very aware. You'll never expect the person that it is. Just using the EMF meter tonight. Alright, I just feel this case is a little bit different. This has been going for, I tried to pop it on as well, to be honest with you, so just want to get it in the view for you guys. Right, okay. Spirit, can you give me a sign if you're here? Please, if you've got sage, feel free to use it now. This is a bit of a different type of video, so don't worry yourselves too much. Spirit, can you tell me who's here with me? Spirit, can you use the EMF meter if you're here? Spirit, who's Ian? Suspect. And who was a suspect, Spirit? Can I ask, is Millie here with us? Millie, can you tell me who harmed you? I hear you. Millie, did Levi take you to his flat on the day that you disappeared? He walked you? So I'm just going to give you what I get, guys. He said he walked her, and she said that I'll just give you this. I feel that she was murdered outside. I don't feel that she was... Oh, there we go. Sorry about outside, guys. A Corsa, I think that's a hairdryer. I'm kidding, it's a 2 litre. That's a story in its own, isn't it? The lights just went there. Could I say that I feel she was murdered outside? Millie, were you murdered outside and not in the flat? Millie, what is the last thing you can remember? From the back. Did he hit you with a blunt object as well? She was telling me to let off. Did he rape you outside? He had her by the hand. Millie, did he put a white tissue over your mouth? Millie, can I ask, were you dead before he raped you? Millie, is there any... She's saying no, she wasn't dead before he raped her. Are there anything you'd like to tell us, Millie? So guys, that noise is the projector. Now the projector didn't go off, but it only makes that noise when it switches on. Spirit, can you give me a sign through the EMF meter if you're here? I'm going to come on to the next video to tell you guys, but I will give you what I get right now. I feel this wee girl's in and out. I don't feel she's completely here in spirit with us. I think after this amount of years as well, I wouldn't blame her. What I do get is that she suffered badly. She suffered badly. Guys, I'm going to end the spirit box and I'll come back on and we will conclude this case. And thank you so much so far for joining. Remember, like, comment and subscribe. It really helps us, but we are greatly appreciative of it as well. Guys, that is us done. But I'm going to keep this on while we're chatting about this just to see if it changes, all right? I feel that, like all the news article says, the evidence is there. I do feel she was pulled from that pathway. What I get a bit frustrated with it is that I feel there were drag marks. I feel she was pulled with her arm and her wrist and she was dragged along. I want to say, I feel something was put over her mouth, but she's telling me she was still alive when this all took place. I don't feel she was knocked out. I don't feel she was even dead until I feel he gave her a blunt force in the morning that he came back to the flat. And if you look at all the other stories, there were people that were unconscious. What I do want to say is as well that it does tell me that another female knew. And I feel another female was on the phone to that man when she was there. She keeps telling me about smelling certain perfume. My theory, if one lady in particular had actually spoke up, she could have saved the life to another 2 women. She didn't. I also think that this man is a serial killer as well as a paedophile. His 14-year-old girlfriend died and they're now suspecting him of the Patsy Morris murder as well. She was 14. I do genuinely believe that she was one of his first victims. I feel going into 2024 he's going to admit to a lot more. But I do feel it's to do with a plea deal of some sort. He'll never ever get out. Never. Is what a case that has been. I'd just like to send out my condolences to the Dowler family and the other 2 victims as well, Amelie and Marsha, their families. I don't think there's no time limit on grief. I don't think it would matter how long down the line it is. I don't think you'd ever go over something like that. I hope a video like this keeps people's eyes open to it could be your normal Joe Blogs in the street. Or when you see something a wee bit off, that you report it. Never be scared to speak up. If you're in that situation, never be scared to speak up to someone close to you or call 101 and speak to them. 2002, we didn't have the resources that we have now, but with that comes the element of even more risk because of online. If you're watching this just now and you're online and you're speaking to people that you don't know online, you've never met and you've never even FaceTimed or you don't know enough about them, stop it now. Because again, unfortunately, as much as we think we know everybody or we want to think that certain people wouldn't do that, you'll never know. And to keep our own children protected and keep ourselves protected, never use words paedophile loosely. Never use it. There's victims out there suffering every single day. There is victims who have lost their life to paedophilia, to serial killers. If you see anything that you think's untoward in any circumstance, you will never do any wrong by contacting the police to just raise a concern. You're better raising a concern than not. If 1 or 2 people would raise a concern in this case, 1, it might never have happened, but 2, even if it did happen the first time, it might not happen the second and third time. Guys, I hope you all stay safe and take care. Thank you for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Night night.